I skip Nottingham and London for different reasons, and we get to Wales, and more specifically Cardiff, where I have few days with the hospitable Lassia. She was quite busy during my visit, but we still managed to get out together, which turned into a memorable experience. Since that part is about 5 minutes long though, I have left it for the end of the video. So I got lucky with the weather and made the most of it. I just wandered around the city on my own way. No plan at all, as in my whole journey. I only had one site to see, Cardiff Castle, which Zach highly recommended me visit. The rest was a blank page that I wrote on the fly. It's March. Everything is waking up to new life, and the feeling of an invigorating, until recently dormant power was very palpable. And here it was, the castle in question. I knew there was an admission fee, and I almost wound up breaking my principle about paid tourist attractions. Zachary had put such a publicity stunt on it that one could hardly resist. But resist I did. £18 for entry was way over my budget allowance. Well, I strolled around the free areas and continued on to the part where I could feel the pulse of the town. Whenever I get the chance, I record the street musicians. For me, there is no better way to convey the atmosphere of a place. That's what I did now as well. In a second, you will be able to see the artist himself.
Time seems so long into this city. It's hard to get close that ocean. It's hard to get just like
And something different yet the same. This sculpture impressed me without having any idea who Betty Campbell was. However, my curiosity was piqued, and that evening I asked Uncle Google. So it turned out that Betty was a community activist and the first black teacher in Wales who put innovative ideas into practice in education. Next day, I went in another direction, along a channel of the Celtic Sea called the Bristow Channel. Still, I passed briefly through the heart of the town. Another monument that impressed me. The Merchant Navy Memorial commemorates all the men and women in the merchant and fishing fleets who died in the two world wars. All those who have neither grave but the sea. And I continued further. It was a long walking, especially with my sore leg, but I had decided that if I had to, I would just catch the bus back, which I did actually, as it was pretty late by the time I reached the end point. But it's still a long way off. I have got quite a walk to get there, to meet and chat with some interesting people.
And also there's, I find it quite fascinating in the water there, the rubbish in the water. I took a picture one day and there was a rose in the centre of it.
Oh,
And it was fascinating. You know, it's how I see things.
oh yes.
The lady was talking about this abandoned railway bridge. Well, I didn't have her luck with the lights, the guttered garbage, the reflections, and the rose in the middle. Unfortunately, access to the bridge is also restricted, as it's obviously quite dangerous, but it was still interesting thing to see. And I learned something new here. Noticing that Cardiff's swift population has been declining for the last 20 years, they have erected a huge tower with nesting sites for the birds and audio that plays their song continuously. Well, it took me a while to figure out where all this chirping was coming from, as there weren't many birds to be seen around. And again, I found a cemetery and a church. Old, of course. And I was lucky enough to walk in just as someone was practicing the organ. Here it is, the final destination for today, an art pier pavilion. Apparently a very popular place to walk around, and it's obvious why. Something that piqued my curiosity though were those little tiles lined up along the pier. I decided to ask. Here,
Maybe
there should be
because-
some story.
Maybe because they used to come here with their children, or
Well, they're fishermen. They had to be.
oh yes, fishing as a family.
The ladies were kind enough to try and answer, but like me, they were just guessing. That wasn't enough for me. I wanted to know why those were here, what their story was. Well, the mystery was solved. What's the story behind them?
When a loved one passes away, you buy a plaque, you can have it on you, and the money goes towards keeping this restorated and painted and all that.
Yeah. And me and my husband spent a lot of time on this pier.
Oh, it's beautiful
So,
here.
yeah,
It's
a lovely
amazing.
pier, yeah.
Where are you
But
from?
From Bulgaria.
Yes,
And
yeah. I think it's a nice idea because
Yeah,
some
it
people
is.
haven't. The only thing is, but I have noticed they do them now. It's his birthday today. You're not allowed to do flowers, right? And I
I
noticed that
noticed-
a couple of them have done it now. But I normally bring flowers and throw them in the sea.
Yeah, I
But
think
the
that's
last
the
couple of times
the
we've
right
been,
way.
and we are Christmas and
The
everything.
tide's been out.
The tide's over in Western, so yeah, I didn't bother today, so it wouldn't have been too bad, like, kind of thing.
Such a lovely day. So, one of the evenings, Lasya had a commitment. She had decided to attend a gathering of the Hare Krishna movement. It turned out that it was okay if I accompanied her, and my interest and curiosity were aroused instantly. All the people were extremely warm, sociable, and smiling. I was honest about what had brought me to the event and that I wouldn't be going a second time. But that didn't seem to bother anyone. On the contrary, understanding that it was my first encountering with the practice, someone handed me a piece of paper with the words so I could participate in the singing. They encouraged me to join in the dancing as well by showing me the steps.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare.
I was left with mixed feelings, but since I wasn't driven by anything deeper than curiosity, it felt very light and enjoyable.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
After that part, I decided it was all over and snuck outside to wait for Lasya to avoid the crowd. I waited quite a while until she finally found me and brought me back. It turned out there was more. Some of the volunteers had cooked dinner, others were serving it. A real feast, if you ask me. The content of my plate kept growing and growing, and I was curious to try everything, even though I had already realized that Indian cuisine was not my thing. However, it turned out that this green one particularly appealed to me. I forgot its name, but it's basically spinach and cheese. Finally, to top it off, there was a dessert, and I could hardly breathe anymore.